When my aunt said, "You get nothing from the inheritance," I smiled, because she had no idea what I was about to do next. She thought I was the clueless one in the family, the quiet niece who wouldn't put up a fight, the one who got pushed around while the so-called adults made decisions behind closed doors. But they all forgot something. I was raised by my mom, and my mom didn't raise a fool. My name's Olivia. I grew up in a big Southern family with traditions, Sunday dinners, and more secrets than anyone dared admit. I was just 24 when my grandmother, our family's matriarch, passed away. She was the heart of our world, and apparently the keeper of a will that would turn our entire family upside down. We'd all gathered at her house for the reading, my uncles in their pressed suits, their wives with forced smiles, my cousins whispering in corners. And then there was Aunt Diane. Now, if you've never met someone like Diane, let me paint you a picture. Perfect blonde bob, pearls for days, and a smirk that said, "I'm richer than you, and I know it." She had always acted like the queen of the family. But the truth? She married into money, clung to status like it was oxygen, and treated the rest of us like we were lucky to be in her presence. So when the lawyer opened that envelope and started reading out Grandma's will, we all held our breath. The house? Left to my Uncle Jack. The lake property? My cousin Rachel. The antique jewelry? Aunt Diane, of course. And me? The lawyer paused, looked up, then said the words I'll never forget. To Olivia, nothing. There was silence. Then a little gasp, then laughter. From Diane. She turned to me, all smug, and said, "Well, sweetheart, I guess Grandma didn't think you needed anything." And that's when I knew something was off. Because here's what Diane didn't know. I used to help Grandma organize her paperwork every Sunday after church for months before she passed. I knew there was a different version of the will. I'd seen her sign it. I watched her seal it in a folder labeled "Final Copy." So why was this lawyer reading something completely different? Something wasn't adding up. I didn't say anything right away, just nodded, kept my expression blank, and let the rest of them finish their phony little celebration. But inside I was boiling, because if there was one thing I knew about my grandmother, it was that she believed in fairness, and she adored me. There's no way she would have left me out, not unless someone tampered with the will. So after everyone left that evening, I stayed behind. Pretended I'd forgotten my purse, waited until the house was empty, then I started digging. Now, I'm not saying I ransacked my dead grandma's home. I'm saying I strategically searched. I knew where she kept her documents, an old mahogany desk in the back room, drawer 3, under a pile of old church bulletins. Sure enough, I found the folder. Final Copy, still there, still sealed, and absolutely untouched. I opened it, read through every word, and there it was, clear as day. To my granddaughter Olivia, I leave $250,000 in a trust to be released on her 25th birthday. I wasn't crazy. I knew she'd included me, and that meant someone switched the will before the reading, which also meant someone committed fraud. Big time. But here's where it gets juicier. The signature on the version read at the lawyer's office. It wasn't my grandmother's handwriting. I compared it side by side with the real one. There were subtle differences. Loop formations, stroke pressure, the slant. I'd taken a forensic handwriting seminar in college for a criminology elective. Never thought it would come in handy for my own family's betrayal. But this was personal. The next day, I drove straight to the lawyer's office. Not the one who read the will, the one Grandma used for years. Mr. Phillips, a gentle old man with a mustache that curled at the ends and a memory like an elephant. I showed him both versions. His hands shook. "Olivia," he whispered, this is not the will I filed." He pulled up a record on his computer. Grandma had submitted the revised will 2 months before her passing. She'd done everything by the book. Witnesses, notaries, all of it. "So how did it get switched?" Mr. Phillips looked me in the eye and said, "Someone accessed this after hours. The only people with keys to this office are myself, my assistant, and Diane." Boom. My aunt had been Grandma's trusted liaison during her declining months. She helped with errands, appointments, and apparently will tampering. I sat in that office, heart pounding, staring at the evidence in front of me. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to expose what Diane did. I was going to make sure the whole family knew exactly who she was. And I wasn't going to wait years for some courtroom drama. I had a better idea. I knew Diane wouldn't go down easy. She was slippery, used to maneuvering behind the scenes, planting whispers, manipulating situations until they tilted in her favor. But this time, she messed with the wrong person. She messed with me. I left Mr. Phillips' office with copies of everything. The real will, the phony one, and an affidavit from him confirming the documents had been tampered with. I wasn't ready to go to court just yet, because if you've ever dealt with family politics, you know, legal battles can take years, and people will spin lies faster than a spider on Red Bull. Number I had to get ahead of this, so I came up with a plan, one that would make every member of my family stop in their tracks and realize exactly who Diane was, and exactly what she tried to do. I started with something simple. Sunday brunch. We always had them the first Sunday of the month, a long-standing tradition Grandma had started when she was alive. After her passing, we tried to keep it going, mostly to keep up appearances, if I'm being honest. I texted the family group chat, yes, we have one of those, asking if we could host this month's brunch at my place. I played the part perfectly. Hey guys, I'd love to honor Grandma with one more brunch like she used to have. I'll do all the cooking. That part was easy. I love to cook. But what I really loved? Setting the stage. Everyone showed up that Sunday like nothing had happened. My Uncle Jack brought his homemade banana bread. Rachel wore some obnoxiously expensive sunglasses indoors. Diane? She showed up late in a white Chanel blazer, holding a bottle of wine like she was blessing us with her presence. I was all smiles, played the gracious host, hugged everyone, served mimosas. I acted so sweet you'd think I was sugar-coated. And then, when everyone had eaten, laughed, gossiped, and gotten comfortable, I brought out a final surprise. Before we wrap up, I wanted to share something, I said, pretending to choke up a little. Something Grandma left for me. Something she wanted me to read to the family. Diane stiffened. I saw it. A flicker of panic. I pulled out a crisp manila folder from the sideboard. This, I said, holding it up, is the final version of Grandma's will. The real one. The room went silent. This version, I continued, was filed with Mr. Phillips 2 months before she passed. Signed, notarized, witnessed, and somehow replaced with a different version before the reading. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. My cousins looked at each other. My uncle turned pale. Diane? She actually let out a little nervous laugh. Oh, sweetheart, that can't be real. But I was ready. I held up both versions. I have handwriting analysis from a certified expert. These aren't the same signatures. I have Mr. Phillips's sworn statement and surveillance logs showing who accessed the documents outside office hours. I turned directly to her. Your name's on that list, Aunt Diane. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I laid it all out, calmly and clearly. Grandma left me a trust, $250,000. She wanted me to get it when I turned 25. That's in 3 months. You had no right to change that. Diane's husband, who had been nursing a scotch in the corner, muttered, Diane, tell me you didn't... She exploded. Oh, come on. It's not like she needed it. Olivia has no kids, no mortgage, no husband. She's just a girl with an apartment and a degree. Meanwhile, my children, your children, I interrupted, each got property, jewelry, assets, you all did. The only person who was cut out was me, and now we know why. Rachel actually put down her phone, shocked. The room turned into a shouting match. My Uncle Jack started demanding answers. Rachel asked Diane straight up, did you actually commit fraud over $250,000? Diane tried to salvage it. I didn't change the will. I just submitted the older version. I thought maybe your grandmother got confused. She was sick. She wasn't in her right mind. Funny, I said, because you sure were happy cashing in that antique jewelry she left you? That hit hard. My phone buzzed on the sideboard. A message from Mr. Phillips. Let me know when you want to proceed legally. Everything's ready. I looked back at Diane and said, you know, I could take this to court. Fraud, forgery, theft. But honestly, I don't have to. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, please, I smiled, because all I really wanted was for everyone to know exactly who you are. And now they do. Boom, that was the moment. The room didn't erupt, it just turned. My family, who'd always tiptoed around Diane, suddenly saw her for what she was. And she couldn't hide anymore. She got up without saying another word, grabbed her bag, walked right out the front door. Her husband followed, scowling. And me? I sat down and took another bite of my casserole. But that wasn't the end, because what Diane didn't realize was that I'd already taken the next step. I had filed a request with the court to reinstate the original will. And more importantly, I had filed a formal complaint to the State Bar Association because the lawyer who read the fake will at the inheritance reading, he was her college friend. This thing was bigger than I thought. Word spread like wildfire after that brunch. I didn't have to say a thing. My family did it for me. Uncle Jack called me the next morning, sounding half ashamed and half impressed. "Kid, I never thought Diane would go that far. You handled that like a pro." Rachel sent me a long text apology, followed by a screenshot of Diane trying to convince her it was all just a misunderstanding. My cousin Jason, who rarely talks to anyone, actually called to tell me that the rest of the family was glued to the fallout. And trust me, I wasn't done yet. Diane had no clue how deep I was willing to go. See, I wasn't just out to clear my name. I wanted to fix this family's legacy. My grandmother deserved better than to have her final wishes hijacked by a greedy, bitter woman with a pearl necklace and a superiority complex. So, let me tell you what happened next. I followed through with Mr. Phillips and submitted the petition to the probate court. All I wanted was for the original will, the one Grandma actually signed, to be reinstated. I wasn't suing anyone, not yet. I didn't want to drag this through mud unless I had to. But if the court reinstated the will, the money in the trust would come to me, just as Grandma intended. The court date was set for a Tuesday morning. Diane tried to delay it, claimed she was out of state, but the judge didn't buy it. I showed up with Mr. Phillips, his assistant, 2 witnesses, and the forensic handwriting analyst I'd hired. I had every single receipt. Diane showed up 30 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors and looking like she hadn't slept in a week. Her lawyer, a slick guy named Carlton who looked like he belonged in a bad soap opera, stood up and tried to argue that Grandma wasn't of sound mind when she signed the second will. Bad move, because I had video footage. Yup. See, Grandma was old school in some ways, but she also had a habit of recording everything on her iPad. And 2 days before she signed the revised will, she recorded a full message to me. In it, she talked about why she made the changes, how she wanted the money to help me get my feet under me, and how proud she was of me for finishing school and staying kind. It wasn't just admissible, it was undeniable. When we played that video in court, the entire tone shifted. Even the judge's jaw dropped a little. There was my grandmother in her floral housecoat, clear-eyed and steady, saying, "If you're watching this, Olivia, it means I'm gone. But I want you to know, this trust is for you. No one else should touch it. Don't let them bully you out of what's yours." The judge reinstated the original will on the spot. $250,000, mine. No drama, no appeals. No one could argue with Grandma speaking from beyond the grave. Diane looked like she might actually faint. But guess what? I still wasn't finished, because while all that was happening, I'd uncovered something even darker. Remember how I mentioned the lawyer who read the fake will at Grandma's house wasn't her usual attorney? That guy, Mr. Harris, was a longtime friend of Diane's. I found out he'd been disbarred in another state for, you guessed it, mismanaging estate paperwork. Diane hired him off the record, paid him in cash, and orchestrated the whole switch without telling the rest of the family. That's criminal. So I took it to the state bar. Then I took it to the DA's office. A few weeks later, I got a call from an investigator asking me to come in for a formal statement. They were opening an inquiry into possible fraud, document tampering, and conspiracy to commit theft. I didn't gloat. I didn't post on social media. I just showed up with my files, gave them what they needed, and let justice take its course. Within a month, Diane received a subpoena. That woman who used to look down on everyone with her perfectly polished smile was now facing the very real possibility of criminal charges. And the fallout? Oh, it was glorious. She and her husband separated, not because of the inheritance scandal specifically, but because once the truth came out, so did everything else. Apparently, she'd been skimming money off his business for years. Her daughters, once proud mini versions of their mother, started distancing themselves. Even her country club friends turned cold. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was the scandal no one wanted to be associated with. Meanwhile, I flourished. With the trust fund activated, I didn't go wild. I didn't blow it on cars or vacations. I paid off my student loans. I put a down payment on a condo. I started a small business I dreamed of for years, an online wellness shop that Grandma and I used to talk about all the time. I even kept a framed photo of her on my desk, smiling at me in her Sunday dress. I didn't take revenge. I took power back. One day, out of the blue, Diane called me. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Curiosity got the best of me. Her voice was tired, small. She said, "Olivia, I just wanted to say I never meant for it to get that far." I didn't say anything. I was scared, she continued. My husband, he was cutting off my credit. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I controlled the estate, I'd be safe. I took a deep breath. "Diane," I said, "you chose to lie, steal, and erase someone else's legacy to protect yourself. That's not fear. That's selfishness." She didn't argue. I ended the call with one sentence. Grandma would be ashamed. And I meant it. Because in the end, this wasn't about money. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about respect, about protecting the truth, about making sure the person who loved me most didn't have her final wishes rewritten by someone wearing fake pearls and a smile full of lies. And I wasn't done just yet. The call from Diane didn't shake me. If anything, it made me sad. Sad that someone could sink so low and still try to justify it. But that's what happens when a person's identity is tied to control. Once they lose it, they unravel. Still, her mess wasn't mine to clean anymore. After everything, you'd think I'd be bitter or hardened. I wasn't. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt free. My entire life, I tiptoed around family dynamics, played nice, stayed quiet, let people like Diane dictate the tone of the room. But standing up to her, fighting back with facts, not rage, it changed everything. My business took off faster than I expected. The online wellness store I'd started with Grandma's inheritance started gaining traction thanks to word of mouth and a few smart partnerships. I named it Matilda and Me, after Grandma. Every product description included a little note inspired by the kindest woman I ever knew. But the story didn't just end with a business and a check, because one day a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew that handwriting anywhere. It was from my grandma's oldest friend, Irene. She was well into her 80s, living in a small town 3 hours away. The letter was short but powerful. She wrote, "Your grandmother always said you were her heart. I never told anyone, but Matilda once showed me a video she made, the same one you used in court. She told me, if they try to cut Olivia out, this will prove what I wanted." You honored her, sweetheart. She'd be so proud. I cried reading that, because despite all the chaos, that's what it had been about. Honoring the woman who stood by me when no one else did. The woman who told me stories while brushing my hair, who wrote handwritten notes in my lunchbox, who left me more than just money. She left me with strength. Irene invited me to come visit her, so the following weekend I drove down. We had tea in her tiny sunroom, and she pulled out photo albums of Grandma as a teenager, pictures I'd never seen before. There were stories, secrets, and a lot of laughter. I found out Grandma had once punched a boy in school for calling her friend ugly. "She was a firecracker," Irene grinned. "Looks like you inherited that too." I left that weekend feeling full, rooted. But before I wrap this up, I want to tell you about something else. Something unexpected. 2 months after the court hearing, I was invited to a family BBQ. Not a formal invite from Diane, obviously. She was persona non grata at that point, but from Rachel. Apparently, most of the family had rallied around me, and they wanted to reset things. I went, cautiously. I wasn't looking for forgiveness or fanfare. I just wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, we could move forward. And surprisingly, we did. My Uncle Jack gave me the biggest hug and said, "Your grandma raised a warrior. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." Rachel, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a vintage locket. "This belonged to Grandma," she said quietly. "I think she'd want you to have it." I wore it that day, still do sometimes. But of course, there were some people who weren't thrilled. Diane didn't show up. Her daughters? One of them reached out to me a few weeks later with a simple message. "I'm sorry for what my mom did. She was wrong. I see that now." People change, some slowly, some not at all. But I learned something vital through this whole thing. Sometimes telling the truth isn't about changing other people, it's about freeing yourself. I could have walked away, could have let Diane rewrite the story, but I didn't. I stood up. I honored my grandmother. I fought for what was mine. And in doing so, I gained so much more than money. I gained peace. I gained purpose. I gained a voice I'll never let anyone silence again. So, to anyone watching this thinking, should I speak up? Whether it's about a will, a betrayal, a truth that's been buried, this is your sign. You are not crazy. You are not being dramatic. You are not wrong for demanding what's fair. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be quiet. And if anyone ever tells you, you get nothing, smile, because they just handed you the fuel to build everything.